Good morning, personnel of the channel of YouTube Vinhos e Prazeres. Today we are back to Italy to talk about a great producer of beautiful wines and that I like very much. And I have been there once, and I asked her to. It's Barbara. What's the surname? I can't tell.
It's not Italian, it's Swiss, so Widmer is my family name.
And you stay in Castellina in Chianti.
Actually, the place where I am right now is between Castellina and Radda in Chianti. It belongs already to Radda in Chianti, but it's a bit closer to Castellina.
If today is difficult like it was to search for your winery, but we could get there.
Well, Google Maps helps, but you still have a few kilometers of dust road. So it's very curvy as everywhere in Tuscany, and from the closest villages, which is, as you mentioned, Castellina and Chianti, it takes you about 10 minutes.
I have to thank you for you coming today and for the time that I have been in your beautiful winery. It's easy to see that is a woman who takes care of the winery.
Well, I take this as a compliment.
Can you tell us the story that you used to take holidays in this area? How did it start?
Everything started 40 years ago, precisely 40 years ago. My parents came with the whole family. That means the two of them and me and my brothers, to spend their Christmas holiday in Tuscany. So we are originally from Zurich, from Switzerland. And from Zurich, it's like a 6-7 hours drive by car to go to Tuscany. And so we were there, and as probably everybody can imagine, it's not really difficult to fall in love with Tuscany. It's a beautiful landscape, great people, absolutely gorgeous food and wine. So during this holiday, they created their dream to purchase a holiday house. And so they looked around, and as soon as they found a house, by the way, the name of that house was already at that time Brancaia, and this beautiful house they fell in love with was in pretty bad shape, and it was surrounded by some vineyards which were also in pretty bad shape. So, but anyhow, they fell in love, and they were convinced that this has to become our holiday house. So they purchased the property, and honestly, a second later, they purchased this beautiful estate. They had two new dreams. One of those two dreams was that they will be able in the future to produce high quality wine, which hopefully will be known all over the world. And the second dream, which was as important as the other one, was that this could become a family affair, something that would go from one generation to the next. And I would say so far that both of those two dreams of my parents has become true. Brancaia is certainly known all over the world, and I hope, I'm really convinced that everybody will agree with me that we are known for high quality wines. And I personally, let's say, as a second generation, but don't get me wrong, because somehow I'm the first generation, because my parents actually never ever became winemakers. So my dad was very successful in advertising in Switzerland, and my mom started to import our wine into Switzerland and sold our wine in Switzerland. So we never ever moved as a family when I was a child to Tuscany. But when I graduated after high school, I studied winemaking, and I moved to Tuscany now a bit more than 22 years ago. So somehow I'm the second generation, somehow I'm the first generation. But anyhow, we are really happy as a family. We are all interested in growing Brancaia, and we are extremely excited that we do have already some interest in the next generation in the business from my brother's children and from my children. So it looks like the second dream of my parents, that this could remain a family affair for quite a while, has become true, as well as the first wish. So you never ever should stop dreaming.
It's not difficult to be an entrepreneur, a foreign person, and a woman in Italy.
Oh, Alberto, it's life is never only easy. Okay, there is always some challenges for us, but I would say that first of all, I had always the support from my family. So I do have, I would say, very modern parents who teach me from the beginning that whatever a young woman wants to do, you can do. So there was no really difference between me and my older brothers. And then I grew up with two older brothers, so I probably was more tomboy. So I was really used to boys. It's definitely. It is still a bit more a man world, but there is space for women to get into the business. If you are willing to work hard, as everybody in its job, there is space to show. I'm sure that you will find, as I have found, people, they just will support you and help you. So it was challenging, and it is challenging, but I think whoever wants to do something by its own will find, sometimes some difficulties, but nothing you can't handle.
And you built everything.
Again, I mean, I had my parents who really had a very great idea, and who started this beautiful journey, and they supported me with their ideas, with their willingness to invest and to be here. So and then of course there are a lot of people around me. So we have an outstanding team. But yes, let's say Brancaia was really built by my family. So we started somehow 40 years ago by zero. Today we do have actually 3 estates. 2 of them are in the Chianti Clássico region, so between Florence and Siena. And the third estate is at the south coast from Tuscany, what we call Maremma. In total, we do have 80 hectares, 40 of them in the Chianti Clássico region, 40 at the coast. This is for, just to give you a bit of an idea, for Tuscany, this is an average size. So we are not a small winery anymore, but we are definitely far away of being big.
Okay. And what is the production today? The size?
I just can tell you roughly an average number, which is, let's say, we produce roughly 700,000 bottles per year, but this can change quite dramatically. Of course, we are totally in the hand of nature, so it could be also quite less. For example, in 2017, we had just a little bit more than half of this production.
Okay.
So it's an average number of what we can produce in a perfect year, and of course we don't have only perfect years. There is always the focus on never ever compromising on quality. That means also that sometimes you have to reduce even more the quantity than what we do anyhow.
And did you have grapes or you planted everything?
Well, in the first estate we purchased, there were some vineyards, but they were in pretty bad shape. So in the last 40 years, we replanted all our vineyards. So today we have in the Chianti Clássico region, we have an average age of 32 years of our vineyards, and in the Maremma, 18 years.
Maremma was vineyards when I took it.
No, there was actually nothing. There were some sheeps on this land, but there was no cellar and no vineyard. So that was everything totally by zero. And our Maremma adventure we started in 1998, so a bit more than 20 years ago.
And what wines do you make in Maremma and in Brancaia?
Well, there are a few reasons. Let's say one reason was that we were really totally excited in this industry, and at that point it was already clear that this will become my profession. So it was definitely not a hobby anymore. So there was the wish to grow, and there was the wish to grow in another region. We didn't really want to go out of Tuscany. So the idea was to remain quite close by, but to find a new setup, other kind of soil, another kind of microclimate. We really wanted to it's as in any kind of work, it's fun to have a new challenge, to have a new project, to learn something new. And going into a new region with a total different climate, with a total different soil, allowed us to produce grapes with the same philosophy. So always focus really on quality, on ripening the perfect grape with the maximum of respect to nature, but in another setup. And when you will taste our wines from one region or from the other, you will really smell the difference. So you will have them always, what we are always looking for, well-balanced wines. So it's important that none of the ingredients is dominated. So and when I speak about ingredients, wine, of course, that means acidity, tannins, alcohol, and flavors, and they have to be in a balance. If they're not in a perfect balance, from my point of view, the wine is not elegant. Can be light body, it can be more important, and it can be a big body, but all the ingredients has to be in the right balance. But you will have a total different flavor. You will have quite a different flavor structure from the Maremma wines than from the Chianti Clássico wines. And then you have some grape varieties, they do mature perfectly in the Chianti Clássico region, and you will have some other grape varieties, they do mature much better in the Maremma. So it's a mix of climate, of variety, and which really gives the personality to a wine. And of course, the region where it grows is a very important part of this character.
And you produce some wines in each place?
Yeah, we have in total, we have a portfolio of 9 wines free wines are produced only from one region. So you have for the Chianti Clássico region, you have the Chianti Clássico Annata, and then of course the Chianti Clássico Riserva, as well as Il Blue, which is a Super Toscan, but nevertheless that it is a Super Toscan. Il Blue is produced only from grapes from the Chianti Clássico region. And then on the other side, for the Maremma, you have our Rosé, which is 100% Merlot and all grapes from the Maremma. Then you have the number 2, which is a Cabernet Sauvignon and produced only from the Maremma estate, as well as our flagship wine from the Maremma estate with the Ilatraia, which is a blend of Petit Verdot, Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc. And then in the middle, so blends of both regions, you have our white wine, Il Bianco, which is mainly Sauvignon Blanc and some Viognier. The Sauvignon Blanc grapes are coming from the Chianti Clássico region, but the Viognier is coming from the Maremma. And then our probably best known wine, because it's the biggest quantity, we are producing with the Brancaia tray, the yellow label. There you have a blend of our free estates, so the 2 Chianti Clássico estates and the Maremma estate, as well as a blend of the free grapes, Sangiovese, Merlot, and Cabernet Sauvignon. And that's also the reason why we call this wine tray, which is nothing else than, of course, the Italian word for free, so free estates and free grapes. A beautiful entry-level wine, which is quite interesting and quite complex.
So the blue and the Ilatraia is in Chianti Clássico that you make it.
No, the Ilatraia not. The Ilatraia is the Super Toscan from the Maremma, and the Il Blue is the Super Toscan from the Chianti Clássico region.
The main market, where is it?
Well, we try to have a few markets which are, let's say, equally important to us. As you can imagine, in this world, there's always things going on. So I personally probably would be scared to have just 1 or 2 main markets. So we have in Europe, our let's say most important markets beside Italy is Germany and Switzerland, as well as also Sweden is pretty important. Then in America, North America, it's the US as Canada, and Brazil is a very good market for us as well. And Asia has been a bit stronger in the past. It's right now a little bit struggling, but we do actually nice business in South Korea and in Thailand. And we have a very good partnership in India, but this is definitely on a lower level than the other markets I mentioned you.
And you sometimes came to Brazil.
Actually, we as a winery, before COVID, we used to come once a year. Yes. And I have as a family, we have very, very good personal private friends in Brazil. So I was quite a few times when I was young in Brazil. So it's a country I do know quite well.
And I like very much the blue and the Ilatraia. I think that's a marvelous wine, like all the best wine from Italy. It's a good inspiration to make wine like that.
Thank you very much.
It's wonderful. And is it possible to visit your winery?
Absolutely. I mean, it goes without saying that this is for some countries right now a bit more difficult and challenging to come to us. But nevertheless, we are open as a winery, and we do offer different kind of visits or tastings. There are wine tastings, very easygoing, where you just can walk in and taste a couple of wines at the wine bar, or you can have a tour with the sommelier who really explains you from the vineyards through the cellar. And then, of course, you can taste all our wines again with the sommelier, which really should help you to get a little bit in how much work and whatever it needs till the grape becomes wine, which I do think is pretty interesting to see, and gives our visitors also a bit an idea that sometimes it's worthwhile to spend a little bit more money because there is also something behind. So we really try to make a beautiful experience. And plus, since for years, we do have also a small restaurant at the winery. So before or after tasting, you can enjoy some seasonal, typical Toscan food. And everything, as you just mentioned, it's in the middle of nature, because it really takes you a couple of kilometers of dust road, and then you're just surrounded by vineyards, as you very well know.
And do you have a cinghiali? I don't know how we speak this in English.
The whiteboard. Well, we have them in the bosque, in the forest, and sometimes we have them on our pasta. So, yeah. Well, in Tuscany we do have quite a lot of whiteboards, but actually, they are not really anymore a big issue for a winery, because in the meantime, and in the meantime means in the last, let's say, 15 years, the deers has become a huge problem. The deer was not an animal we had in Tuscany, and the population just has exploded. And the deers, if you compare them to the whiteboard, they have two new problems. One is that the deer loves the box, the new leaves, okay, just when they start to grow. So they really could clean everything and you wouldn't have anything left. And plus, of course, they can jump over a small fence. So before the deer issue, we used to have just a low fence around the vineyards shortly before harvest, and this was good enough. And this, of course, is not working anymore. So most of the wineries, as well as our winery, we do have now, since quite a while, very high fence surrounded the whole property, the whole year round, of course. So the deers can't come in on our property, as well, of course, at that point, the wild boars. Small animals are still, because the fence is done with quite big holes. So let's say rabbits and little animals, they still can walk and pass through our property, but the bigger ones, they are now which is good, because they really will make a huge damage.
And you have to make protection for the birds?
In Tuscany so far, the birds are not a big problem. Of course, they will eat some berries, but as long as this is just some berries, that's not really bad. That's okay.
And how does it seem this harvest of this year?
So far, it looks exciting. We had a little bit of challenging spring. It was extremely cold in the beginning of April. We had very, very cold nights, as more or less all over Europe. So there we had definitely some damage, but it was not too bad. So right now everything looks really good. We are now in the Maremma since 2 weeks. The color is changing, and in the Chianti Clássico region, it just started a couple of days ago. So we probably will pick our first grapes end of August in the Maremma estate, and this will be the Merlot grapes for our rosé. And then the harvest will go on till probably mid of October.
The last one is Cabernet Sauvignon.
Mostly, yes.
Okay.
But it's like everything in life, and there is no fixed plan. You always have to go back and to double check if it's still that way or not. And sometimes reality is just different than what you thought.
The nature is not easy to.
Normally, I love the challenge of the nature, because I really do think as more you try to understand nature, as more as you try to get into balance with nature, better, and as more unique the grape becomes, and therefore, of course, the wine. But of course, nature can be very challenging, and sometimes, especially in the last few weeks, certain things have happened in Europe and all over the world, which are so heavy that you think sometimes, well, that's now a little bit too heavy. I don't know if you have heard, but there are some regions in Germany, they had so strong rainfalls. There are some wineries, they lost everything. There was a week ago very strong hailfalls in North Italy. Again, some people, they lost their whole, also fruit, and not only grapes, also cherry, albicocks, and so this is tough, because that makes you very clear that you're just tiny. It's, as long as you still can achieve your product, it's very challenging, but it gives you also a lot if you can work with nature. But of course, if nature does destroy everything what you worked for, then it's really hard.
You don't use to put fire like in France to protect the.
We use some fires, but it's also the candles, the ones we know very well from those beautiful pictures, because actually the pictures are looking very nice when you have all those little fires. Those candles do not really warm up the air. What they do keep the air moving. Okay, so what we are doing sometimes is that we make some fires outside of the vineyards, but bigger ones. Of course, you just also need some luck and hope that it really works. But yes, no, of course, if those things are happening, you try to do everything what you can to protect your vineyards.
And Maremma is hotter than.
Maremma, well, in average, it's let's say the highest temperature in Maremma is very similar to the highest temperature in the Chianti Clássico. But the lowest temperature is much lower in the Chianti Clássico than in the Maremma. So Maremma is, through the whole year, it's warmer. It does rain less. So you have the rain season more concentrated during the winter, and then you will have a very long period where you won't have any rain. So generally speaking, if you put the grape, you will have you have to be very careful in the Maremma that the grape won't overripe, that you still have a certain acidity, which of course is important to keep the freshness in the wine and to make it really drinkable and not too overloaded. And then on the other side, in the Chianti Clássico region, you really have to be careful that you can achieve the perfect ripeness. So those are, let's say, the two big opposites of those two regions.
And do you have some plans of new wines, or stable in the wine, or continue with the same wines?
At the winery, there is nothing ever stable. So you always try to learn. You always try to improve, and that's also the exciting thing, because each year you just learn that there is still quite a few things to learn, and you know your vineyards just one year better. You have add a new experience, and you will of course try to use this new experience and the new things you learned to do it even better next year. So there's never ever a point where you will be at the end and like, oh, now I do know everything and better than this, it's impossible. There is always something where you can improve. But coming back to your question, if there are of course always some tests we are doing, and there is really a new wine in the pipeline. It will be a Grande Selezione, so again a Chianti Clássico, and it will be released in about a year. So it will be Chianti Clássico Grande Selezione 2019, and it will be 100% Sangiovese. Of course, this year the focus is totally on Il Blue because it's Il Blue's birthday. Il Blue will be or is 30 years old now, so it's 30 years. This unique label, which give me a second, Alberto. I just will grab the bottle. So this is the anniversary bottle. So it won't be black as always. It will be golden. And it's just a way to celebrate the first 30 years of this beautiful wine. And that everybody knows, I'm of course extremely happy to have this beautiful label, which was designed 30 years ago by my father. So he had 30 years ago really a very new way to look at wine labels. This wine label, it looks today still very unique and elegant, but of course it doesn't look shocking anymore. But 30 years ago, trust me, it was absolutely shocking. There was hardly any modern wine label in this world. So he was definitely totally ahead of his time. And for us, of course, it's a big pleasure to have such an outstanding design. And it was a very, very particular to design a little different label for its anniversary. So this is for us, of course, this year our focus, but next year we have this Grande Selezione wine, which I'm sure you will like as much as the other wines.
How much time it passed by a barrel, the blue one?
The Il Blue, well, we did some change now, especially with this anniversary wine. It used to be 20 months in barriques, and about 2/3 of the barriques new and 1/3 used. And with the vintage 2018, so with the anniversary edition, we reduced it to 18 months. So it's 2 months less than it used to be. And after those 18 months, we will taste each single barrique. That's something we have done also before, to do, let's say, the last quality test. And then we will blend the whole wine in a tank. And normally before the anniversary edition, we just bottle it after the blending. But with the anniversary edition, we changed a bit the way of working. So we blended the whole wine, and then we kept the wine for other 3 months in a concrete tank. So the wine, all the single barrels had 3 months time to get together, to balance each other, to embrace each other, and then we bottled the wine. After bottling, our wines will be always for at least 1 year at the winery before we start to sell it. So the 18 is really, even when you taste this wine when it's young, or when you want to drink it even when it's so young right now, you will have already a pretty high drinking pleasure. It shows extremely well. There are some beautiful fresh fruit flavors, a great structure, absolutely perfect, well integrated fruit flavors, a good acidity, and then of course very smooth and fine tannins. So a big wine, but a wine in a way that if you want to join it right now, just do it. If you want to keep it for 5 years, for 10 years, for 20 years, whatever in your cellar, that's fine too.
Ilatraia is the same process.
Ilatraia is a similar process, but it's a bit less new barrel than with the Il Blue.
Ah, okay. And you use French barrel?
We use only French barrels, and we use middle and middle plus toasting, and we use a barrel. For those two wines, it will be only for one other vintage used, the used barrel, but in generally we use a barrel for 4 years. That means more or less 2 vintages of wine, and then we will sell it. So if you compare it with the past, we increased a little bit the lifetime of a barrique at the winery. It used to be 3 years and it's now 4 years.
We have to thank you for your time to tell us about this wonderful winery. And of course, it's a product of your job. And I think that every time is better. I used to wait.
That's at least a hope.
I used to wait for about 10 years to open one like the Blue or Ilatraia, that I think they are better in this age. The people generally doesn't like to tell about that. Once I asked it to a producer, and how long will it take, she didn't like to tell me, because she wants to put it in the market. And but the person.
It's Albert, that's really the difficult thing. I mean, many consumers, they want to buy a wine this afternoon and then drink it tonight. We are living in a world where many people do move around very often, and they don't even have a proper wine cellar. So it's not, you can look at the negative part. I prefer always to look at the positive part. For me, a glass is always half full, never half empty. If you compare it with the past, we do have today so many people, they are interested in wine. Wine, if you compare it 40, 50 years ago, was actually something quite snobbish. It was like, the rich people with the big houses. Today, a student or whatever, everybody joins from time to time just to have a great glass of wine. But they don't have, the big wine cellars and the big houses. So who cares? But at that point, of course, they want to drink the wine in a few weeks or in a few months, and they don't want to buy cases and cases and keep it in the cellar for 10 years. So I do think as a winery, we have to try to make happy both worlds, okay? The one who wants to keep the wine for 10 or 20 years, as well as the person who wants to open the bottle right now. And I truly do think it's impossible as a winery to start to sell something which is, at the moment you do sell it, not drinkable. So you can easily say that this wine, of course, does have a beautiful life ahead, and that it somehow may be a pity if you drink it right now, because it will be even more complex, more elegant, and just more beautiful than right now. But whenever you start to sell a wine, it should show at least its first beauty.
Thank you for your explanation. And I hope I come back to Brancaia to see it again.
That would be absolutely gorgeous. I do really hope that everybody is doing well, and it would be very, very lovely to welcome you again, Alberto, at Brancaia, and whoever is watching our video, you're more than welcome at the winery, and we really love to have visitors. We love to show where we are and what we are doing.
Okay, thank you. And Italy is the birth of my grandfather, so I like very much your wines, and I continue appreciating it. And I hope everybody likes the video that we are making now. Thank you very much.
Obrigado, Alberto.
Obrigado.